Okay, it's 6 guys. We can start. So cool. Good evening, everyone. Firstly, a very warm good evening. I'm hoping everybody had a good weekend, right? So we're here, a fresh start to the week, right? So yeah, we've to just give you a heads up as to what we'll be discussing today. We're basically going to do the revision of the source boxes from chapter 2, which is titled as Kings, Farmers and Towns, right? We've already done the whole of chapter 2 ka revision in the previous classes in 3 different parts. So here we are to do the source boxes ka revision, right? So that's briefly what we're going to discuss in today's class, right? Cool. A couple of you are already here. Uh, Agastya is here. Hi, Agastya. Pankaj is back. Hi, Pankaj. Good evening. Cool. I'm hoping others will join in the meantime. I do the introductions, right? So just give me 5 minutes. I'll just dive into the topic straight away, right? Yeah, as most of you all know, my name is Nikitha and I'm the history educator here at Unacademy Scholars channel, and I take classes for both standard 11th and 12th. And a little bit about my educational qualifications. I have recently graduated from Ashoka University with a bachelor's degree with a major in history and a minor in political science. So that's my background. So quickly talking about Unacademy's plus features, you can learn live from the comfort of your own houses. There is unlimited access to so many courses. These are taught by top educators of India. There are regular doubt clearing sessions, answer writing sessions, practice tests and live test series. There's exhaustive coverage of syllabus, mentorship and guidance along with access to study materials, right? So those are some of the benefits. And coming to Unacademy Plus Cup pricing, the prices which you see on the left side are the actual prices for 6 different types of subscriptions, right? So if you use the code which is TUM10, you'll be basically given a 10% off, and these are the post discounted prices, right? So whichever one you feel comfortable with, go ahead and subscribe to that. And quickly moving on to Iconic, here there's personal mentorship provided. There are live doubt solving sessions, weekly reports, parent connect, and also study planners. The Iconic pricing list is a little bit higher than the plus because of special features. So here we have 9 different ranges of subscriptions. The same thing, the left side are the actual prices. If you use the code with a 10% discount, you'll be getting them for the prices on the right side, right? So, and also there's something called Bucks Bounty, which is basically an opportunity for you learners out there to report any sort of inappropriate content in the video, and you can be the first one to report this and you can claim a prize for that. And you can use to report this by using the form in the description below of this video. And lastly, there's something called as Emerge, which is a test based on the CBSE guidelines, the latest CBSE guidelines. It's highly helpful, especially in terms of practice for your term 1 boards. So the link for that is in the description below. Go check that out and also enroll yourselves. It's really helpful. Okay, yeah, so that's a little bit of the pitch we had for today. We'll just talk for a few minutes and then straight dive into the topic, right? Okay, Nandini is here with us. Hi, Nandini. Okay, so apparently you're new to my class. No worries. We've already done like explanations and detailed discussions of all the chapters. We are doing a revision series right now, right? So no worries. In case you have any questions, you can just ask me at any point of time during the class, right? So I'll answer them. Any sort of help you need, just let me know. Yeah. Dheeraj is here. Hi, Dheeraj. Good evening. Sony is back. Good evening, Sony. Pankaj, unfortunately not. Today we don't have an MCQ quiz. Today we'll only be discussing about the source boxes of chapter 2, right? We've just done a quiz on chapter 2 a couple of days back, so no, not today, Pankaj, the quiz. But like in case we are having a quiz, I'll let you know, right? Like I'll let you know at least 2 classes in advance so that you can prepare. Yeah? Okay, so the main focus for today is source boxes. Guys, just one thing, please don't neglect your source boxes, because if you must have had a look at the sample papers released by the board, right? Like in almost, I think in section C, all of the questions are based on the source boxes, right? So in that sense, source boxes are really, really important. So please pay attention to them. Don't neglect them, right? So today, that is why the main focus is discussing the source boxes of chapter 2. I think we have roughly around 11 source boxes, right? We'll discuss all of them. So in case you have any questions, let me know, right? Okay, Suraj has a question. Suraj, I don't know the particular date as of yet, but like when I get to know it myself, I'll definitely inform you guys about that. Yeah? So, yes, one short revision of the source boxes, Pankaj. Cool. So, yeah, so especially regarding the source boxes, right? There is some kind of information available. Along with that, there are most of the source boxes have a question towards the end, right? For example, how we have in this slide, this question, right? Why were officials appointed to supervise these occasional groups? Again, these questions, you can come up with different answers, right? There is no one particular definite answer. You can have your own explanations, your own reasons, right? So this is just like a starting point for you to think about several things, right? So pay attention to them, start thinking about them, because they'll be useful in your further education of history, if not now. Yeah? So keeping that in mind, we'll kick off. So the first source box in your textbook is titled as What the King's Officials Did, right? So it's a well-known fact that king is the head of the state, but he alone can't look after everything in the empire, right? He needs some assistants, or whom we basically called as officials and ministers, right? So what did they do? What role did they play in the empire, right? So we look at that in this source box. So this is basically an excerpt from the account of Megasthenes. Again, who is Megasthenes? Megasthenes is a ambassador to the court of Chandragupta Maurya, right? So when he came and stayed in India for a couple of years, he started writing a book called Indica, yeah, which basically talk about the Mauryan Empire, right? So in one of those books, he talks about what these king's officials did, or what their role was, right? So he says, and he kind of mentions different kinds of officials who lived there, right? So he says, of the great officers of the state, obviously there are many. Some are of high status, some are of lower status, right? But irrespective of that, there were officials to superintend the rivers, right? There's also somebody to supervise what's happening in the river, like illegal fishing, stuff like that, right? There's somebody to take care of the land measurements, yeah? Measure the land, give it certain boundaries so that your neighboring peasant will not encroach onto your land, right? So these kind of activities were done in Egypt. So Mauryan Empire and Mauryan officials also, they were inspired by what was being done in Egypt, and that is how they borrowed these official posts, right? And certain other things also, like inspecting the sluices by which water is let out from the main canals. Yeah, sluices again is nothing but in rough terms, it is some kind of barrier which will control the water flow, right? Some kind of gate, let's imagine, right? If the gate is open, then the water will flow from one side to the other, but if the gate is closed, the movement of the water is restricted, right? So that is a sluice. So there is somebody who is in charge of regulating these sluice movement, right? He will decide whether the gates to be opened or closed. Yeah, and to make sure that everybody has an equal supply of water. Yeah. So, and also nextly we have huntsmen, who are basically people who hunters, right? Whatever they did in life, yeah, if it's a good thing, they'll be rewarded for it. If it is something which fits into the interests of the king, he will be rewarded for it, right? Through gold, through grains, through something else also, right? But if he does something against the king's wishes, he'll obviously be punished, and the punishments are as severe as sometimes death punishments, right? That is brutal. Yeah, and they collect taxes. Obviously somebody is there to collect taxes, some kind of officer, right? And superintend the occupations connected with the land, right? There are woodcutters, carpenters, blacksmiths, miners. To take care of all of these people and to supervise these occupations, there are a different set of officials. So again, like, what is the gist of the whole slide here, right? On the whole, there are so many officials within the Mauryan Empire to take care of so many different things that are happening in the empire, right? So the role of officials here is very, very important. That is what the source box is telling us. Yeah. So now that brings us to the question, which is, why were officials appointed to supervise these occupational groups? Again, we don't know. Again, you can come up with your own answers, right? If you all have any thoughts regarding these questions towards the end, please put them down in the chat box so that we can discuss them, guys. Yeah. Any sort of thoughts, like you have your own explanation for it. Nothing is wrong, nothing is right? Because you have your own justification for it. So if you have any answers for these sort of questions, put them down in the chat box. We can have a look at them and discuss them, right? If they're valid points. Okay, so at least my answer, or like my thought process for this as to why were officials appointed to supervise, is generally any human being, if there is no supervision or if there is no kind of boss like figure or somebody who is going to guide them, I don't think we'll be able to do the work, right? We'll just keep procrastinating. As humans, most of us are lazy, right? So we won't be able to do that kind of effective work unless there is some kind of supervision, right? That is why at least I think that kings have appointed so many officials to supervise these occupational groups, right? That is my explanation. You can agree with me, you can disagree with me, right? You can have your own point of view, but yeah, that's what I think. Cool. Pankaj, I'm really sorry, but like, you won't be getting any type of PDF in Hindi, because at least as far as I am concerned, I am not well versed in Hindi. Like, I don't know how to speak Hindi, right? So that is why I can't provide any sort of Hindi material, Pankaj. Sorry for that. Okay, UPSC lover is here. Good evening, whoever you are. But like, it'll be very kind of you if you can tell me your name. Yeah, Sony has an answer to it. She says these supervisors are appointed to manage whole work, which has to be done on the right time. Absolutely correct, Sony. That is a very valid explanation, right? Like, think of it. If the work has to be finished in time, there's a particular deadline. Unless there is supervision, unless there are officials guiding you, you won't do it, right? You just can't do it, because as humans, all of us are bound to be lazy at some point of time, right? So you're absolutely right there, Sony. A good answer that is. Okay, thanks for spelling out your name, Ansh. I'll remember that. Thank you. Um, cool. So keep answering, guys, if you all have any thoughts regarding these questions, right? Otherwise, we can go ahead to the next source box. Any doubts, any comments, answers, just put them down. Otherwise, I'll move on to the next source box. Okay, Sakshi is here with us. Hi, Sakshi. Cool. Yes, Ansh, definitely. You can ask me anything related to the subject. Type down your question. In the meanwhile, I'll talk a little bit about the second source box, right? Otherwise, we won't be able to finish on time. Um, okay. So the second source box in your textbook is titled as Capturing Elephants for the Army, right? What does this mean again? That elephants as a part of the army or as a part of the military campaigns for the Mauryan rulers, they are very, very important. Usually, if you think of any army, let's say, we only think of like horses or foot soldiers, right? But especially for Mauryans, there are four different wings of the army which are equally important, right? So just to give you a brief mentioning as to what those four groups of wing or four wings of the army were. Number one, it is infantry, right? The spellings are here. If you don't understand my writing, I'll just spell it out for you, right? INFANTRY, right? Infantry is nothing but foot soldiers who just fight with the opposition group just using their foot, right? The second one is cavalry, right? Use of horses in the army, right? The third one is elephantry, use of elephants in the army, as the name suggests. And the fourth one is chariotry, right? Use of chariots. I'm assuming everybody knows what chariots are, right? So these are the four different wings of the army for Mauryan rulers especially, right? So now we'll be basically looking at this third wing, which is the use of elephants in the warfare, in the army, right? So we'll look at that. But before that, let me just have a look at the comment section. Ayushi, we don't have a class on Wednesday for class 11, but we do have a class on Thursday. So I was thinking we could do the quiz on Thursday, Ayushi, if that's okay with you. Okay. Tanishk says please do the maps, especially for chapter 2. Uh, okay, we could do that. No, I was thinking not just chapter 2, but like what if we dedicate a whole session to just doing the maps of all the 6 chapters? Right? How will that be? Uh, I was thinking we could just dedicate one session to the map thing, right? Like one day. Probably I'll figure out in the next week when we can do that. Because individual chapter ka maps won't take much time. It'll hardly be over in 10 minutes, right? So if we combine all the 6 chapters ka maps, then we can do just the maps one day. If that sounds okay with you, Tanish, just give me a thumbs up or like say yes. Yeah, that'll be great. One day for maps. Yeah. Cool. So, but I'll inform you like at least 2 classes before that on so and so particular day we'll be doing maps, right? So I'll just tell you once I fix the date, right? Okay, so Ansh has a question regarding chief, samantas and gahapatis. इसे तीनों के बारे में बता दीजिए. Cool. So just in like one line, I'll tell you what these definitions for these are, Ansh. So chief, right? Like chief is nothing but exactly the ruler or the king. Then you will ask me why is the name different, right? So blindly remember, in the southern part of India, these rulers of different kingdoms were known as chiefs, right? That is the only difference. And there are other differences as well. For example, chiefs did not have any proper armies. In case they are going to any war, these peasants itself used to become temporary soldiers. But in case of the actual kings, there were particular armies, right? Like standard armies. So that's the one difference between chiefs and kings. So always whenever you're thinking about chiefs, compare and contrast it with the kings, then it will be easy for you to understand, right? So I'm hoping that chiefs part is clear. Quickly moving on to Samantas. Samantas is basically related to the Guptan Empire, right? In the case of Guptans had so many provincial officials. Yeah, the state is divided into so many provinces, right? So for every province there was a head. That head of the province is called as Samanta, right? So basically you can call him as a provincial officer. That is Samanta. Yeah. And lastly, when we come to Gahapati, in very rough terms, you could say Gahapati is the head of the family. Just like how fathers are the head of our families in patriarchal systems, right? In the same manner, Gahapatis were the head of the families. They had the right to inherit all of these resources, yeah, ancestral property and stuff. Yeah. Again, I'm not going into the details of these, but the basic definitions of all these three words are what I just told Ansh. If you still need a little bit of explanation, probably you can stay back towards the end of the class. I'll give you much more details, right? Just let me know if that clarifies your doubt, Ansh. Okay, Aditi, no, chiefs don't work under kings. Chiefs and kings are two totally different things. Chiefs are also equivalent to kings, right? What I was just saying is in the southern part of India, where Cholas, Cheras, Pandyas, all these people used to rule in present day Tamil Nadu, Kerala, and all, they prefer to call themselves as chiefs rather than kings. Just the name is different, right? But the position is the same. Yeah, so I hope that clarifies Aditi's doubt. Okay, you got it, Ansh. Good to know. Ronak is back. Hi, Ronak. Good evening. Cool. So quickly moving on to talking about elephants, right? So the brief context as to why we are discussing elephants is clear, I'm supposing. So now we'll talk about the role of elephants in the Mauryan Empire, right? Very crucial. So there's this book called Ardhashastra, which we already know by now, right? It talks about every particular detail of how the military is organized in Mauryan Empire, right? And while talking about that military, it also focuses so much on the elephants, right? How are they captured, right? Because elephants usually live in the forests. So like bringing them from the forest to the mainland and then giving them training, using them in the warfare. To do all of this, first you need to capture the elephants from the forest, right? But elephants are huge. One person definitely can't do this job. It needed the help of so many people to just capture a couple of elephants, right? So we'll just have a look at how many kinds of people were involved in capturing elephants, right? Number one, there were guards of elephant forests, which basically is in every forest elephants won't be there, right? Only in some forests elephants will reside, especially in the central part of India, Madhya Pradesh and all. Yeah. So when you're going into the forest, there are definitely forest guards. So number one, he will go to capture the elephant. Along with him, people who actually have the habit of rearing elephants, right? Because they know how to treat an elephants, what their behavior is. So those kind of people are also necessary. And then people who can trap the net and then therefore chain the legs of the elephants, right? That person is also necessary. And then somebody has to take care to guard the boundaries, right? So and then people who live in the forest, because they know what the conditions of the forest are, who can nurse these elephants in case the elephants are injured or something like that. Yeah. Along with all these people, it will be very surprising to know that even the female elephants helped these villagers to actually capture the male elephants. Right? Very simple. Just think of this logic, right? if a male elephant sees a female elephant, obviously they both will come together, right? At least they'll move closer. And then there'll be somebody who will trap the net on the male elephant and then capture the elephant. Very simple, right? So different strategies, different techniques, different people were involved in capturing elephants in the first place, right? And then bringing back to the kingdom, training them, that's a whole another story. Yeah. So that kind of huge effort was put in to capture elephants, right? So according to the Greek sources, again going back to Megasthenes' accounts and also some other Greek sources, we come to know that Mauryan ruler had a standing army of 6 lakh foot soldiers. Just imagine how huge the army was. Yeah, 6 lakh foot soldiers. And then there was 30,000 cavalry, 9,000 elephants. It's huge, right? It's definitely such a huge army. This is what the Greek sources say, Greek authors. But some of the Indian historians, they just think that all of these numbers are exaggerated. That might not be the true case because it's too huge to believe. It's so good to be true, right? But nonetheless, different sources give us different numbers. Which to believe in and which to not is our choice, right? So again, towards the end of this source box also, we have a question which says, if the Greek accounts were true, like let's just believe for some time that there were actually 6 lakh foot soldiers, 30,000 cavalry and 9,000 elephants within the Mauryan Empire, right? If that's the case, if that is the truth, then what kind of resources do you think the Mauryan ruler would have required to maintain such a large army? Definitely the answer is a lot, right? It's very clear that in order to maintain so many things, you needed so much of money in the first place. Yeah, because you have to give salaries to the soldiers, you have to provide food to the soldiers, you have to provide houses to the soldiers. At the same time, you also have to provide fodder to the animals, the elephants and cavalry. In order for them to be healthy, you need to give them nutritious food. For all of that, you need so much money and resources. So definitely the amount of resources and the kinds of resources which the Mauryan rulers required are vast, are very huge, right? At least that's what I think. Yeah. So you'll have any different comments on this, put them in the chat box. We'll talk about it. Yeah. Okay, quickly having a look at the comment section. Ronak, I've told you repeatedly, it's confidential, right? So please understand. Yeah. Aditi has a request. Revision of chapter 6 and chapter 7. Cool. We can do that, Aditi. You want me to do it right in the next class, or when do you want me to do it, Aditi? We can go according to that, because as of now we don't really have a particular schedule or something of that sort. We can do whichever chapter ka revision if we want to, right? So any suggestions you have, any specific parts which you find difficult, let me know. At least for next class I can prepare that topic, right? I'll explain that topic. Yeah, so the choice is yours. The floor is open to suggestions, right? Okay. Okay, if there are no questions regarding the source box itself, then I will go ahead. Aditi says tomorrow. Class 11, class 11 lecture will be happening, Aditi. For the 12th standard students, the next class is on Wednesday. So if you want me to start chapter 6 on Wednesday, then I can do it on Wednesday, not tomorrow. Tomorrow the class is for 11th standard kids, Aditi. Okay, just let me know if that works. In the meanwhile, I'll quickly switch to the next source box. Okay, so I'll just like skim through this because there's not much details in this source box. It just talks about one of the Pandya chiefs. Again, I'm referring to the Pandyan ruler as a chief and not a king, because there's a differentiation between South Indian rulers, right? So this Pandyan chief by name Senguttuvan, yeah. Sometimes it's difficult to pronounce the names, but like you don't have to remember, right? This chief name was Senguttuvan. So one day he visits the forest, right? So after he goes into the forest, what happens, right? Did people come to see him? What did they do after coming, right? We'll look at what happened actually after Senguttuvan entered the forest. So this information we're actually getting it from Silappadikaram, right? What is Silappadikaram? Just like how Ramayana and Mahabharata are epics for the whole of India, Silappadikaram is one of the epic for the Tamil land, like Tamil Nadu, right? It is obviously written in Tamil during Sangam age, right? So this information we are getting it from Silappadikaram. It says when this Pandya chief Senguttuvan actually visited the forest, people from all over the neighboring areas, like people who were living in the forest, people who were living on the mountains, right? They rushed in huge numbers to see the chief, to greet the chief, yeah, to say hello to the chief or something like that. Yeah, and it's not just normal, they were celebrating it. They were singing, they were dancing, they were very grateful that the chief entered the forest, right? And along with them, they also brought so many gifts. Yeah, like wide varieties of gifts. The list is here, right? Sandalwood, cardamom, turmeric, honey, wood, mangoes, medicinal plants, bananas, what not, right? Like starting from animals, living things, non living things, everything. So many different items these people brought to the king and basically gifted the king. Yeah, gifted the chief. Sorry. Yeah. So that's again the basic gist of the whole source box. But again, like the question towards the end is, why did people bring these gifts? What would the chief have used these for? Again, like why do you usually gift people? Right? Like even on our birthdays, we do casually gift our friends or relatives, right? For festivals and birthdays. Why do we gift them, right? It's just a good social connection or just having your own social life. Yeah. Number one, it's definitely for social relations that you gift people as a kind of remembrance or to celebrate your bond, right? Different reasons. So again, we might have different answers here as to why these people actually gifted the king, because king though has so many resources and wealth on his own already. He doesn't need all of this from the people, right? But nonetheless, people actually did gift him, right? So that's the source box. Fairly simple. I don't think there will be any questions on this. Okay, Sneha is here. Hi, Sneha. You're new to this channel. No worries, Sneha. We're here for you always. In case you have any questions at any point of time, just let us know. Right? We'll be there to help you. Yeah. And at least as far as history is concerned, we're doing the revision for term 1 boards. Right? So regarding that, any queries, just let me know. Okay, Aditi says Wednesday chapter 6. Cool. I'll start chapter 6 on Wednesday, Aditi. Okay, Yash is back. Hi, Yash. Good evening. Good to see you after so long. Ansh has a question again. Yes, Ansh, you don't need to ask my permission every time. Just type down your question, right? I'll have a look at that. Okay, Aditi has a fair point here. To have good relationship with others and also to show power. Okay, this is a very interesting point, Aditi. That's very cool, right? Because to have good relationships or social relationships with other people is a general point which we all think of. But thinking of it in the power dynamic is amazing. Good job, Aditi. I've never thought in this angle, but like, fair enough. like if somebody is dominating, right? Like, and they want to show their power or exert their dominance over the other creature, probably, yeah, gifts are useful in a sense that way. Fair enough. Good point, Aditi. Okay. I think I can move on to the next slide. Cool. So now we'll quickly talk about Samudragupta. The source box is titled as "In Praise of Samudragupta." Very, very famous, right? Because we have been talking about the Prayaga Prashasti inscription for so many times now. Yeah. But nonetheless, we'll also have a look at this again. Yeah. So it's basically an inscription in present day Allahabad region, right? Why is it called as Prayaga Prashasti? This is one question I keep getting from students, right? Because Allahabad, back in those times, back in ancient India, was known as Prayaga, right? And Prashasti is that kind of inscription which praises the king. Yeah. So together it's called as Prayaga Prashasti because this Prashasti was installed in the place called Prayaga. Right? So it was basically done by Harishena, who was the court poet of Samudragupta. He basically talks about Samudragupta and the greatness of Samudragupta. Right? Fairly simple. Again, even if you like go through the whole of this source box, the only thing you'll come across is that Harishena is totally praising Samudragupta in every possible aspect, right? He says that he is such a kind human being. Samudragupta is such a nice human being that he doesn't have any sort of enemies on earth, right? Which is an indication that he is a good person, right? He has good qualities. Whatever he does is good, right? He has so much of fame because he's an ambitious ruler. He conquered so many territories. He is considered as the supreme human being, which in Sanskrit we called as Purusha, right? And why is he called Purusha again? Why is he called the supreme being? Because he makes, at least he made sure that the prosperity of the good is forever there, and whatever bad was happening, he destroyed that bad things or evil things. That's why he was referred to as the supreme being in that inscription, right? He had so much of humility, he had so much of compassion, he used to honor so many human beings and respect so many human beings, right? So all of these good qualities. He goes on to such an extent where he compares Samudragupta with gods. That is too much, right? That is another level of exaggeration because he's just a king. He is a human being at the end of the day. So in that sense, comparing Samudragupta with God is kind of an exaggeration. That is what the other historians believe, right? Actually, Harishena says that Samudragupta is equal to Kubera, Varuna, Indra, Yama, who are all different Hindu gods, right? So again, it's up to you to believe that whatever was said in this inscription is true, or is it false, or some of it is it true, some of it is exaggerating statements, right? Whatever you want to believe in, you can believe in that. You're very free to have your own opinion on this, right? But nonetheless, this is what the actual inscription says, right? So that's Prayaga Prashasti. Very, very important, especially in terms of your exam point of view, guys. So please make note of this. Okay, so Ansh, to answer your question, I mean, there's not much difference between Janapadas and Mahajanapadas. Again, the literal meaning, if you take, what is Jana, right? In Sanskrit, what is Jana? Jana is people, right? And Pada is land. So what is Janapada here? People living in a particular land, right? We call it as a territory, region, state, country. We gave it different other names, but the literal meaning of it is people living in a certain area, right? So after that, what is Mahajanapada? What is Maha? Maha is something like great. Yeah. So these are all Sanskrit terms. If you literally translate them to English, then you will know the actual like why is it termed like that, right? So it's called as Mahajanapada because it is a great kingdom. Let's just consider Janapada as a kingdom and Maha as great. So that becomes a great kingdom. So all of these 16 Mahajanapadas, which we already talked about in chapter 2, they are obviously very prosperous. All of the 16 were great because they had amazing rulers, they had amazing efficient administration. They were great in their own sense. That is why we are calling them as Mahajanapadas Ansh. Other than that, I don't think there's any hidden meaning to it, right? It's just fairly simple right in front of us. Yeah. Uh, that's what at least my history teachers taught me, and that's what I believe in. But if you have any contentions to it, if you think it's false, if you think there's something else to it, let me know. We can talk about it. Yeah. Okay. Aditya is here. Class 11th history Thursday. Aditya, I'm really sorry, but like people were asking for a quiz for the for whatever the chapter we have done in the last class, right? So on Thursday, Aditya, we'll be having a quiz. After that, we'll start chapter 7, right? I hope that sounds okay with you, Aditya. Okay, Ansh got this. Cool. Okay, I'll quickly move on to talk about the next source box. Absolutely correct, Aditya. That's exactly the schedule we have. Okay, Ansh, we actually do have one for Scholars channel, right? The link for that is in the description below of this video. So if you haven't joined already, you can go join the Telegram channel using that link, right? It's right there in the description. Go check that out. Okay, fair enough. I think I'll quickly move on. The next one is the Sudarshana Lake in Gujarat, right? So this is just a lake. We'll be talking about lake for some time. Who built it? When was it damaged? Who repaired it? And stuff like that. Yeah. The source boxes in your textbooks are really, really interesting, guys, at sometimes. Um, cool. So this particular lake by name Sudarshana, it's in present day Gujarat. To be very specific, it's in Girnar, right? Girnar is a place in Gujarat, right? Again, Girnar is important in terms of map pointing. Just go back to your textbook and locate Girnar. Otherwise, we'll do it in the next, whenever we're doing map pointing, right? So this Sudarshana lake was not a natural thing. In fact, it's an artificial reservoir, right? And just beside the lake, we have one of the inscriptions installed there, right? That inscription was actually written in the 2nd century CE. Yeah. And the language in which this inscription is written is Sanskrit, right? And it's a rock inscription, which means it's written on a rock, right? So what does this inscription basically talk about? It talks about the achievements of the Shaka ruler by name Rudradaman. Rudradaman, very famous Shaka ruler. We've come across this name a couple of times, right? So this inscription talks about the achievements of Rudradaman, right? So the inscription actually mentions that this particular lake, right, the first time when this lake was built was during the reign of Mauryas, right? Again, we don't know which person actually built it. We just know that he was a governor during the rule of Mauryas, right? We don't know the name. It's anonymous. The inscription does not mention it basically, right? And then at some point of time, after a couple of decades, there was a terrible storm, which is a natural disaster, right? So because of that, this artificial reservoir was broken or damaged, right? At that point of time, we actually had Rudradaman as the ruler when the storm hit by. Yeah. So what does Rudradaman do then? He was a very kind king. He was a compassionate king, right? He thought, without collecting money from the people, without taxing the people, right? let him use his own money, like his money from his own pocket, and repair the tank or repair the Sudarshana lake, right, with his own resources without asking money from other people. Right? That is the exact information we have about Rudradaman repairing the Sudarshana lake in this inscription. Yeah. So again, the history of this beautiful lake, it also gets damaged at some other point of time even after Rudradaman repairs it. After that, once again, another Guptan king repairs it, right? But irrespective of the history, the main focus here is to talk about the Rudradaman, right? He basically repaired it without taking money from other soldiers. Sorry, other people. Yeah. So okay, at some point of time, don't you think that it is some kind of what do you say, just putting it out there that, you know, like, I am kind. He is telling the world that he is kind. That is why he did not take any sort of money from other people, right? That's what at least what he's trying to portray in some sense. Yeah. And also there's a question for this which says, why did rulers make arrangements for irrigation? Right? Fairly simple, because unless there is some sort of irrigation facility, there won't be agricultural productivity. Right? Only if there is agriculture produced, people can eat, people can pay taxes, and that is how the revenue is generated to the state or the king. Yeah, because that is why it is definitely necessary that there are arrangements for irrigation made from time to time. Yeah, fairly simple logic. So that's the Sudarshana lake. Any questions till here? Please let me know. Okay, if there are none, I think I can move ahead. Uh, okay, this source box is not much important, but like I'll just say in one sentence as to what this talks about, right? So it basically talks about boundaries. Yeah, like let's imagine like present day India, right? Like we have a certain boundary. We have that particular boundary line or that place which marks the end of Indian territory. If you cross that, some other country will come, right? Just like that, back in ancient times as well, it was very, very important for the rulers to maintain a particular boundary for their empire, right? So, who says that? In Manusmriti, the book which we already talked about a lot of times, it is one of the best known legal texts of early India, right? It was written in Sanskrit and compiled between 2nd century BCE to 2nd century CE, right? So in this textbook, whoever the author of Manusmriti is, he says that maintaining the boundaries is very, very important, right? So yeah, you can construct the boundaries by various things. Constructed through stones, constructed through bricks, coal, pebbles, sand. Use whatever material you want to, but definitely a boundary should be there in order to protect your own kingdom. Right? So that's the gist of this particular source box, which is not that important. Right? So yeah. Okay, Ansh has a question regarding Shatavahanas and Shakas. Okay, fairly, like within two sentences each, I'll say Ansh. So Shatavahanas are basically a very huge dynasty who ruled for almost 3 centuries, right? Especially in the Deccan and central part of India. Just to give you a rough figure, they ruled over the present day parts of Maharashtra, Karnataka, to a certain extent Madhya Pradesh, Andhra Pradesh, Telangana and Chhattisgarh. Parts of, not the entire territory, but like parts of this territory. Right? So Shatavahanas actually ruled there. They ruled from 1st century BCE to 2nd century CE. Right? One interesting fact about Shatavahanas is there were 30 different rulers. I'm not saying 1-3, it is in fact 30. Right? 30 different Shatavahana rulers who ruled over those 3 centuries. Right? Very huge dynasty. And also there was a lot of importance given to women in Shatavahana Empire, right? To talk about it in detail, it'll take a whole class, but like just to give you like basic details in your textbook, that's that about Shatavahana's Ansh. And when it comes to Shakas are basically not of Indian origin, right? They are of Central Asian origin. They were ruling over the northwestern frontier of the Indian subcontinent, present day Punjab, Sindh, Pakistan, Afghanistan. Yeah, those areas were ruled by Shakas. And another important fact about Shakas in your textbook is Shakas were the first people to issue coins or mint currency having their own faces on the coins. Faces and names of the rulers are minted on the coins of Shakas. They were the first to introduce that, right? And they also ruled almost in the certain same time period, right? Uh, yeah, like I think that's basically a 2-3 points to talk about Shatavahanas and Shakas. But like if you want anything in detail, like the economy of the Shakas or like culture of Shatavahanas or something like that, let me know, Ansh. I'll talk about that in specific. Right? Aditi, I get your point. In fact, I've noted down. I'll definitely start talking about chapter 6 in Wednesday's class. Don't worry, we'll do the revision. Yeah, I get it. Bhakti and Sufi is kind of tougher when compared to other chapters, right? But nonetheless, it's an important chapter, especially in terms of your exam. Yeah, so we'll start doing chapter 6 on Wednesday. No worries, Aditi. Um, okay, I'll quickly go on to the next slide. Again, this I don't think this source box is also that important, but like just to conclude it in 2 lines, what this source box talks about is the life in a small village. So till now, whatever we've talked about is majorly about the king, the ministers, the rich people, the elite people, how their lives are, the political administration and stuff, right? But we have never come across history which talks about the life of an ordinary person. What are the day to day activities of a normal human being? He's a commoner. He's not a king, he's not a minister, he's not rich, right? So, what does that kind of person, or let's say fairly simply a farmer, right? What does that person do? How is the village run on a day to day basis? That kind of information is very, very little, right? It's not available to us in great quantities. But there is one particular book which is Harsha Charita. Yeah, it's called Harsha Charita because it's the biography of Harshavardhana. Harshavardhana is again another very, very important king back in the medieval times, right? He was basically the ruler of Kanauj. He wrote this biography for himself, titled it as Harsha Charita. He composed it in Sanskrit, right? Um Sorry, I'm so sorry. This is a biography. It's not autobiography. He did not write it for himself. Instead, his court poet by name Banabhatta wrote it for him. Right? He wrote it in 7th century CE. Right? So, in that Harsha Charita, there is some excerpt which talks about one particular village in the outskirts of the forest in the Vindhyas. Right? He talks about different kinds of people, what occupations are they doing, how is their day to day living, what did they eat, what is available to them, right? Were there any markets available? If there are any, did women go and sell them in the market or men went and sold them in the market, right? So different kind of like normal day to day activities. So all of this information is given in Harsha Charita, right? Again, not important in examination point of view, but like just keeping it out there. Yeah, but just remember one important point, that Harsha Charita is a biography written by Banabhatta, who is the court poet of Harshavardhana. Right? Just remember this one sentence. Yeah. Okay. Ansh, okay, yes, I get your point. In your textbook, it says that they were issued by Indo-Greeks, the coins bearing the names and images of rulers, right? It is true. In your textbook, it says that Indo-Greeks were the first to issue coins like that. Again, but outside of your textbook, if you go through some of the academic articles or like somewhere in your undergraduate level, there is some contention. Yeah, these are some different debates out in the academic world that it was not Indo-Greeks, like it was Shakas who first issued, or in the same time they issued, something like that. But don't worry about that because it's not there in your textbook, right? Just stick to your textbook. Remember it as Indo-Greeks only, right? I'm sorry for confusing you, but it is somewhere outside information, right? Just hold on to Indo-Greeks there. Okay, so moving on quickly to the next one. Here we'll be talking about Prabhavati Gupta and the village of Danguna. This is important, right? This source box is really important, especially when we're talking about land grants, right? So again, all of us know who Prabhavati Gupta is. She is the daughter of one of the very important Guptan rulers, right? She actually married another Vakataka king. Vakatakas are another important dynasty ruling over central India, right? So she actually married another Vakataka king, but nonetheless, she was a very powerful queen, right? She had so much of property under her name, yeah. So one day she wanted to make a land grant to a particular person, right? And usually whenever these land grants are made, they make sure that one inscription is inscribed talking about this land grant, like who donated it, who received it, what are their names, what is the occupation of the people, which village was donated, how much of land was donated, right? So all of these details are mentioned as a part of the inscription, yeah. So in one of the inscription which talks about the land grant of Prabhavati Gupta, yeah, it says that on the 12th day of the bright fortnight of Kartika. Again, what is Kartika? Just like we have 12 months, Jan, February, March, April. According to the Hindu calendar, also we have 12 months. They have their own names, right? So one of the month is called as Kartika, right? So it basically means the 12th day of Kartika month. This particular land grant was made, yeah. Who was it made to? It was made to a person or like a teacher by name Chalana Swamin. His name was Chalana Swamin, right? So again, same information, right? Like he has so much of power. This village has so much of power because the whole of the village is being given as a land grant to Chalana Swamin by Prabhavati Gupta, right? There are so many exemptions there. Like the village people need not pay any sort of tax to the king because it was a agrahara land, right? So all of these details, it was actually written down as a part of that inscription, and the village which was gifted as a land grant, it was titled as Danguna or Danguna, whatever you want to call it, right? The spelling is here, it's Danguna, right? So again, who inscribed this? It was actually engraved by Chakradasa. Yeah, so many names are here. Don't get confused. But just remember that Prabhavati Gupta was the person who actually donated the village of Danguna as a land grant. Right? So, yeah. That's the gist of the source box again. But like, if you want any other further details of this particular land grant, please just let me know, guys. Okay, just give me like 5-10 minutes. I know it's already 7, time to wind up, but like I think we have like 1 or 2 source boxes. We'll just complete them quickly. Yeah. Okay, so nextly we'll be talking about the Malabar coast. Yeah, Malabar coast is in present day Kerala. Yeah, what is happening here? Yeah, Malabar coast is again one of the very, very important coasts on the western part of the Indian coastline, right? We have other coasts as well, other ports, Konkan Post, Mangalore coast and all of these. But like Malabar was very, very important because so much of trade used to happen. Internal trade, external trade, exports, imports, so much used to happen, right? So we have a lot of information about what kind of activities used to take place at the Malabar coast. The answer for that is a lot, yeah. But how do we get to know this information? By reading a particular book called Periplus of the Erythraean Sea. It is titled as Periplus of the Erythraean Sea. We don't know who wrote it. It is an anonymous author, right? But we know for a fact that it was a Greek sailor. Yeah? And he wrote this book in the year 1st century CE. Right? So he says that a range of materials starting from pearls, ivory, silk cloth, all of these materials, they are very rich in India. They are so abundantly available in India. That is why from the Malabar coast, these materials used to be exported to other regions. For example, Egypt or Central Asia or China, anywhere, right? So all of these abundantly available materials like precious stones, silk cloth, all of these were available in India. That is why they were exported. But whatever were not available, for example, copper, tin, lead, coral, crude glass and all, they are not available in India. So all of these materials were imported from other regions. Yeah. So in that sense, Malabar coast was a crucial place where the export imports used to happen. It was a very crucial coast. So many ports were located on this Malabar coast. And geographical location of that is in present day Kerala. Right? So that's Malabar coast. I don't see any questions. Therefore, I will quickly move on to the next slide. So the next one is titled as the Orders of the King, right? So it basically talks about Ashoka, who is referred to as Devanam Piyadasi in his inscriptions. Nowhere in the inscriptions he is referred to as Ashoka, right? Again, he basically says that he has some kind of arrangement, yeah. Even though he's working, he's sleeping, he's in his bedroom, he's having his free time, he's in the garden, doesn't matter. At any time of the day, irrespective of whatever he is doing, if there is any crucial news or any important announcement that he has to know, there are certain kind of officials known as Pativedikas who are responsible for gathering information as to what's happening in the empire, right? They have to immediately report it to the king. Who is the king here? Ashoka, right? He also says that this kind of facility was never there before in India. He was the first person to introduce this, where these Pativedikas, roughly translated into English, they are reporters, right? Irrespective of whatever the king is doing, their first duty is to come and inform the king immediately, yeah, regarding anything that's happening in the kingdom, right? So that's basically this source box. Fairly simple again. I don't think any complications are here. I think this is the last one, last source box. It's titled as the Anguish of the King. Again, this source box is also in relation to the Ashoka, right? So Ashoka ascended the throne after his father died, right? So in his 8th year of rule, right? In his 8th year of rule, he tried to conquer Kalinga, which is in the eastern part of the Indian subcontinent, right? Which is in present day coastal Orissa. So when he was trying to conquer Kalinga, there was like brutal warfare, like so many people were killed, so many people were injured. There was bloodshed everywhere, irrespective of women, children, men, young people, old people. So many people died in that war, right? He just looked at that. He just looked at people crying, people sobbing, people dying, people injured, right? He was just heartbroken. Ashoka was very much heartbroken, right? And then he decides that he will give up violence. He actually does. After the Kalinga war, he never indulges himself in any sort of war after that. He gives up violence, he gives up this warfare, and he's totally devoted to the spread of Dhamma. Right? Dhamma is the principle which will ask you to lead a moral way of life. Right? We all of us know what Dhamma is. Yeah. So this philosophy was founded by Ashoka, and he made sure that every person in the kingdom is living their life according to the Dhamma principles. Right? So that is the anguish of the king. That's the pain of the king which he suffered after looking at the Kalinga war consequences. Right? And then he decides to give up violence. Yeah. So that's roughly the anguish of the king. So next we'll move on to talk about history of Pataliputra. Just like any other city, Pataliputra also had its own history, right? It was not a city in the beginning. It started off as a village. That time it was called as Patali Grama, because Grama in Sanskrit is a village, right? So initially it was called as Patali Grama. It was a small village. But in the 5th century BCE, when Magadhan rulers decided to shift their capital from Rajgir to Pataliputra, then it was renamed. Yeah, at that particular point of time, when there's a capital shift by the Magadhas, then it was renamed as Pataliputra. Before that, it was called as Patali Grama. Right? So again, by the 4th century BCE, it became one of the largest cities in Asia because there was so much of development happening. Right? One of the largest cities in Asia. And like at some point of time, it lost its charm. It started declining. Its importance is no more that great, right? So all of this is the history of Pataliputra. It's not constant. It was nothing in the beginning, then it became something, then it became very, very important, then again there was a downfall, right? So even the Chinese pilgrim by name Xuanzang, when he visited India in 7th century CE, he actually talks about this Pataliputra. By that time, it was not in a proper state. It was in the ruins. It hardly had any people living there, right? So Xuanzang actually talks about the ruins of the city of Pataliputra, right? So that's that. And just to give you a difference between what languages and what kinds of scripts were used in the Mauryan Empire, yeah, especially talking about the Ashokan inscriptions, right? They were usually in Prakrit, yeah, mostly in Prakrit, in the interior parts of the subcontinent. But if you move towards the northwestern parts, where today Pakistan, Afghanistan, Punjab, Sindh and all, these places had Ashokan inscriptions in Aramaic and Greek language. Again, why is this? Because people in the northwestern part of India spoke Aramaic and Greek. They could only understand Aramaic and Greek. That's why inscriptions are in those languages. But in the mainland India, people spoke Prakrit. That is why Prakrit was the language in the inscriptions. Right? And Prakrit language basically followed the Brahmi script, whereas the Aramaic and Greek languages followed the Kharoshthi script. Again, there's a lot of difference between languages and scripts, right? I've told this difference in the last class. So remember that and associate these points with the actual definitions of languages and scripts, right? So that's that. And yeah, one last slide we'll be talking here is the inscriptions, right? All of us know what inscriptions are, but just to give you a recap, inscriptions are writings engraved on hard surfaces. Yeah, something has to be hard, be it a copper plate, be it pottery, be it stone. Yeah, only on hard surfaces you can actually write these inscriptions, right? It talks about various things. It can talk about achievements of different rulers, different people. It can talk about activities that are happening in the empire or any other sort of ideas, anything, right? It can talk about anything. It also talks about who commissioned them, like who is responsible for making this inscription, right? Who funded for this, right? whether women did this, man did this, uh, different kinds of information is available on inscriptions, right? And usually these inscriptions are permanent records because these are written on hard surfaces, and even as time passes by they won't erode easily. Yeah, so that is why they are permanent records, which also sometimes carry dates. Let's say a particular inscription was inscribed in 1st century CE, right? It specifically mentions the date. Like 1st century CE, this inscription is being written. Some inscriptions don't have the date. Then we use different types of techniques like paleography or styles of writing or dating, right? And then we ourselves, like historians or archaeologists, discover to which century did this inscription belong to, roughly, right? So that kind of provision was also there. Lastly, the earliest inscriptions were in Prakrit, right? Because that is the language which ordinary people spoke. Yeah. And also, like, if you look at the textbook, you will find different scripts and different languages being written. So just have a look at them. Not that important, but like just to give a rough idea, have a look at what the language or what the script is of Prakrit and Sanskrit, right? So yeah, there are so many languages spoken like Pali, Tamil, Sanskrit, Prakrit. Yeah, various usage of languages and scripts in not just modern empire but the whole of ancient India, right? Cool. So that's basically what we have had for today's class. We've covered all of the source boxes and also different small boxes in your textbook, right? So that basically brings us to the end of second chapter. Yeah, from next class we'll be talking about Bhakti Sufi traditions, as Aditi asks for it. So cool. Any questions regarding the source boxes or second chapter in particular? Let me know, guys. We'll talk about that. Otherwise, we can end the class. Abhishek has a question. Is Rudradaman a Shaka ruler? Yes, Abhishek, absolutely right. He is a Shaka ruler. Cool. Okay, so if there are no questions, I'll try to wind this up. But in case you have any, just type them down. Like, keep typing them. I'll try to conclude this. Yeah. So, guys, just to let you know that there's some kind of crash course going on for humanities students of class 12. It's a 1.5 month crash course till your term 1 boards start, right? It actually started on 1st of November, but it's not too late to join anyways. These are the instructors and the languages that they teach. Have a look at them and feel free to go join them because they're really, really helpful, right? The medium of delivery here is English again. Yeah. So the link for that is in the description below. Go check that out. And yeah, thanks so much guys for tuning in. I'm hoping everybody had a good time talking about the source boxes, because source boxes are actually fun, especially the 12th standard source boxes, right? They are fun to talk about. They give us different insights into various things, right? So yeah, I'm hoping everybody understood whatever we spoke about today. In case you all have any questions, let me know. And yeah, finally, if you like the content of these videos, please do like them, share it as much as possible, and also subscribe to the channel Unacademy and scholars in particular, right? Thanks once again, guys. Thanks for tuning in on a Monday evening. It was great to have a talk with all of you. Abhishek, what about maps? Abhishek, yes. So I'll just like set my I'll see my timetable, because this week's schedule is jam packed because I've already decided what classes to take this week, right? So probably we'll do the map ka thingy next Monday, but like I'm not sure, but I'll definitely inform you a class prior that on so and so particular date we'll be doing maps, right? So don't worry about that. We'll definitely do them probably in the next week. I'll tell you the date in the next couple of classes, right? So that's regarding the maps, Abhishek. Okay, so any other questions, guys? Okay, if there are none, then I'll wind this up. So cool. So the next class we have is on Wednesday, right? I'll see you guys again on Wednesday to talk again as a part of the revision series, right? So till then, have a good evening today and also have a good day tomorrow because I won't be seeing you tomorrow, right? I'll finally see you on Wednesday at 6 in the evening. Yeah? Thanks again for tuning in. Bye, guys. Take care, everyone.